Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do the sequel to my previous video where I talked about 15 science fiction books I want to read next. And of course, Michael K. Vaughan didn't stop with science fiction, nor did he stop with the horror he did prior to that. But he went and did 18 fantasy books. And for most of them, he did fantasy series, so not just fantasy books. And so I'm going to do similar. I'm going to try to go quick because I don't have a ton of time to spare here. But I did want to make sure I got this up and was able to show these off because I'm excited to have some of these singled out as priority targets for the future. So one of the first ones I'm probably going to get to is going to be the follow-up to Sumerian September. I'm going to be diving into my Volume 2 in the Best of Robert E. Howard. Earlier this year I read Volume 1, which I have on my Kindle. And this is the other Del Rey edition of Robert E. Howard that I own. So I'd love to read these. Of course, there's a Conan story or two in here. I won't need to reread those when I come across them. But there will be a whole bunch of others. Cole. It'll have some Solomon Kane. I'm sure Bran McMorn will be in there. But it'll also have things like the boxing stories, and I'm assuming some kind of a pirate story. So I'm very excited to dive into even more Robert E. Howard. Because I think I can safely say at this point in time, he is one of my favorite fantasy authors right now. And so that means I want to pick up and read everything he wrote. It's the same sort of approach I have towards Tolkien. I just can't get enough of what they've been writing. So this is not the book I'm going to be reading. This is book 1 in the Legend of the Condor Heroes series. I've read books 1 and 2, have them on my shelf. I have books 3 and 4 on my Kindle. I need to read books 3 and 4. So that is why I'm mentioning this. Excellent, really excellent series so far. I don't know much about Kung Fu or any of that, but it's extremely well done. There's the brick here, book 2 in the Kingkiller Chronicles, The Wise Man Fear. I don't have I think there's a follow-up that comes between this and the upcoming book 3 that I don't have, but I'm sure I can easily get my hands on it. But I want to get around to this because I really enjoyed Name of the Wind. Going with Conan, we have Dark Crusade. So this is the first book in the Kane Chronicles by Karl Edward Wagner. I've got all but one, I think, of the Kane series of books. Some of them are books, some of them are collections of short stories, and I want to read every one of them. So that is on my fantasy list. I showed this recently-ish, Shadow Moon by George Lucas and Chris Claremont. This is a Willow novelization, I think a sequel, almost. And apparently it's a series, so I'm excited to dive into this one. I think that I will enjoy it because I loved Willow growing up. This is book 1 in the Tawny Man trilogy. This is Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. So this is the third trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings. This is the next trilogy I need to read. It's been about a year and a half since I've visited one of her worlds, so I'm definitely due to dive back in. I have all 3 of these in a matching hardcovers on the shelf. And that's the extent of what I'm putting on here, because I don't have the other, I think there's 2 more series, a trilogy and a duology after this. I don't have any of them, but I'd love to make progress. I hear on very good authority that this is excellent, that it's even better than the first 2. There's a couple of series that I'm going to have on here that I only have book 1 of, such as Gardens of the Moon. This is book 1 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which gets all kinds of wonderful hype. Everybody seems to love it. I have book 1. I'd love to read it. Going with that, I have book 1 only of the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever, Lord Fowl's Bane. by Stephen R. Donaldson. I've been wanting to read this for a while. I haven't gotten around to it. Yeah, I'd love to try it out to see if it's something I'd like to delve into further at a later point in time. One of the things that I still want to do more of, I don't have nearly as many for fantasy as short story collections, so I'm going to read through Rogues. I started it previously. I think I've read maybe 2 stories in here, so I want to get back into this. And as you can see on the back, it's a very long list of authors that contributed to this, so that's going to get me exposed to a whole bunch that I don't know, and to get me some more reading by some of the ones I do know and already know that I love. We have Green Rider by Kristen Britton. I have first 4 books in this series that I got on an eBay lot. I remember reading this when I was a lot younger than I am today. I think my sister read the entire series, but I only read maybe book 1, just because I had so many other things I was trying to read at the time. So I remember enjoying it, and I'd love to dive back in at some point in time. We have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. It's all the rage, so I want to dive into this. This will be a nice little kind of cozier palate cleanser. One that I'm sure is not on anybody's list but mine. This is Shadows of the Short Days by Alexander Dan Vilhjálmsson. This is an Icelandic author, so this is translated Icelandic fantasy fiction that came out about 2 years ago, and I picked it up. I have not gotten around to it, but I really would like to. One that should be on everybody's list, probably doesn't really fall in the fantasy category, but I'm going to put it here because I'm making the list, and so I'm choosing to put The Forsaken Boy by BookTube's own Troy Tradip on here. It's a werewolf novel, so there's my claim to fantasy right there. He was kind enough to send me a copy. I really would like to read it and to talk about it, and so I imagine it's going to be excellent because I know Troy, and I have a hard time believing that he would do something that's not excellent. This is book 6. I've read the first 2 books. I have books 3, 4, and 5 on my Kindle, but I like holding up physical books rather than just my Kindle, so I want to get back to Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. There's 7 books, I believe, in the series. I've got all of them between physical copies and e-copies, so I'd love to continue those. I read book 2 just last month and really enjoyed it. One that I don't have more of, and this one will be a reread, and I'd like to do more reading of it, and that's why I want to reread it. That's Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. So this is book 1 of the Elric saga. I read it about 2 years ago. I would love to reread it. I know there's some really, really fancy editions that are out now that are really awesome hardcovers. I've seen them in the store and just haven't been able to pick one up when I've seen them. And so I'd like to read more Elric, maybe at some point in time. Rereading that might prompt me to put those on a Christmas list or something to see if I can't get some of those hardcovers to add to my collection and read. So now we come to 3 more. We've got 3 left, and then I've got a bonus one at the end. So these are the biggest commitments that I've got coming up. So this is The Great Book of Amber. You saw Michael Cavon hold this up on his channel. This is by Roger Zelazny. I've read the first 2 books of it, 9 Princes in Amber and The Guns of Avalon, and really, really enjoyed it. Jeremy Fee was kind enough to send me this, which was very awesome of him, and I've neglected the series. I want to get back to this one. This is outstanding stuff. So I think when I finish Barsoom, I'm going to dive into this because they're about the same kind of length and going to be easy to jump in and out of. Of course, being an Arthurian fan, we have to have something Arthurian on here. So this is The Skystone by Jack White. This is book 1 of the Camlid Chronicles, set in the 4th century of Britain. So this particular one is the forging of Arthur's Britain. I'm guessing Arthur probably won't appear in this. This is probably his predecessors. And I hear it's an okay series. I have all 9 of them that I was able to get at a friend's for the library sale here in about a year and a half ago. So I have them all. If I really enjoy it, or even if I somewhat enjoy it, I can continue right through. When I was a lot younger, I was a lot more forgiving for Arthurian stuff because I loved King Arthur, and so I wanted to read all of it. I find that as I've gotten older, I have less tolerance for bad Arthurian stuff. So it may be that I just don't get through much of it, and that's okay. But I'd like to try it before making a decision on whether it should stay or whether it should go. So the last one that is in this 18 is the Big Quest. That's the History of Middle-earth by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is part 1. I've got parts 2 and 3 on my shelf as well. So part 1, as you can see here, has got 5 books in it. Between the 3 volumes, it's got all 12 volumes of the History of Middle-earth. As you can see, in the past, before book 2, I did start this. I got through Book of Lost Tales part 1, and I think 1 tale through Book of Lost Tales part 2. But that was before I became a more voracious reader again. And it's Tolkien. I've wanted to read this. This is a mountain that I know I have to climb. And it's not out of any hesitation of thinking I'm not going to enjoy the process, because I know I will. It's just a big, big task. And BookTube, of course, makes it hard to do tasks like this. Which is why, instead of following along on XYZ, I'm trying to make these priority lists. That's why I think it's so great about Michael's ideas here. Because it helps to narrow down the options. And, you know, if there's an event and I can see something on that shelf that fits, sure, great. I'll jump right in. If somebody wants to buddy read something, great, I'll do that. I've already had somebody reach out about Book in the New Sun, so I'll be starting that this weekend. And we'll be going a very slow burn through Gene Wolfe, and I'm excited about that. I want to be the Tolkien fan that has read the History of Middle-earth. And I know I can do it. There's no excuse other than time and dedication to get through. So the last thing I'm going to, I know I went fast, I'm pressed for time. But I wanted to mention one that I don't have any of the books of. I've read these in the past. But I am going to, at some point in time, pick back up the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. I read them to death as they were coming out. A new book would come out, I would reread the entire series up to that book and read the book. That was the madness of my youth. That was pre-Lord of the Rings. So at the point in time when I was reading them, they were my favorite books. My favorite fantasy series. Supplanted David Eddings, which had prior to that been my favorite fantasy series. Which prior to that I think was probably Redwall series. You know. So I've read them plenty of times. And the reason I want to revisit them is not only has it been ages, over a decade since I've read any of them. I want to see if they still hold up. But Pax Panic, that was one of her favorite book series. She wasn't a rereader, but that was where we formed our biggest bond, was over that book series, being able to chat about it. And I had always told her that at some point in time, you're going to have to reread. We're going to have to do a Sword of Truth read-through. And obviously that's not going to be able to happen. But in her memory, I would like to do that. I would like to read at least the first 4 books in the series. Maybe the rest of the 11-book series. I don't know about going to all the other spin-offs that have happened since then. But I've read the first 11 books and remember enjoying most of them. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I want to do. I do have an Audible credit. So I think what I might do is, since I know the book so well, get Wizard's First Rule as an audiobook and start listening to that and see how that's going. So I'm going to be reading Sword of Truth and probably talking about it over the next 2 months. I imagine it'll take a while to get through. It's a long book. So if any of you have it on your shelf and want to Vox or me to chat about it, feel free to do so. I know it like the back of my hand. And yeah, I don't want to make anything big and official or anything like that, but I'm going to try to chip away at that series. And if you have any interest in reading along, let me know, because I'd love to chat about it. So there you go. There's my 18 fantasy books. I'm going to be making shelf space right to the side of my computer. I think I'm going to be redoing my shelves here soon. I've been holding off, waiting for a package that I know is supposed to come at some point in time from A Wonderful Booktuber, but hasn't arrived because the last time it was sent, it did not make it safely. It got returned. And so I've been kind of holding off on rearranging things, but I've got one more of these videos to do it at some point. And after that, I'll be forced to, because I've got a whole bunch of books just kind of stacked here on my desk, and I'll need that space at some point in time. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I will catch you later.